Yeah, we recording. Now recording. All right. Sick. Okay. This seems to be working now. Cool. We're doing this call-in thing, y'all. Where basically you can ask questions in the office hours chat related to music, sound studies, recording, conceptual, technical, whatever the fuck. It's just about chatting because some people was talking about this and I wanted to oblige maybe for this week as one of the other pieces of content. So boys noise. Boys noise, you in the house?
Yes, I am.
Yes, yes, yes. What's going on? Tell everyone where you're calling in from at least. That way.
This is like American radio station style,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Wonderful.
Hey, tell us where you're calling from, pal.
It's perfect. I wish we had something like that in the Netherlands. It's there's no it's not as extreme. No, I'm so in that sense I'm calling from the Netherlands, and it's
what time is it
almost 9 p.m. here.
Got it. It's almost 4 p.m. in Puerto Rico. Yeah, Lachlan, you can just hop in to listen. You don't have to participate, obviously. What's going on with you? Tell me what's the deal?
Well,
first of all, tell everyone your actual name, so I don't have to keep calling you Boys Noise.
Boys Noise. Yeah, my actual name is Oscar.
Oscar the Boys Noise. What's going on, Oscar?
Yeah, I'm good. It's extremely shit weather here, so there's enough time for me to work in my workspace with trying out a lot of stuff. But at the same time, there's a curfew here, so I can't stay for too long there. Or I have to actually bring a mattress and stay there overnight.
Oh, Jesus!
I'm a bit limited in terms of like my nightly workflow because I usually prefer to work at night.
Yeah. Is that like you'll get arrested or you'll just get ticketed?
Yeah, you get a ticket, but the past few days here in the Netherlands have been like very there have been a lot of riots in the night.
I saw those fire bombs and shit.
Yeah. It's really embarrassing shit.
What is the is it like right wing, like anti-mask people, or is it just kids fucking around?
It's really like a mix, and it's like just like different groups getting entangled with each other. So you have like bored kids who just are there for sensation, ending up, hanging out with the anti-corona measurement people and the conspiracy people, and also like the right wingers. And it just creates like a really weird situation. Like, for example, a few days ago, like there were like a hospital was vandalized because this group of people just happened to be around the hospital, and they just figured that might be the right place to destroy, right? Which is like completely nuts.
The fuck. Yo, man, Netherlands has America beat on a lot of things that people don't realize.
Oh yeah, totally.
America's not number one when it comes to ignorant shenanigans.
it's embarrassing. Like it's completely embedded into Dutch history.
Right. Well, what's going on with you musically? Is there any good news?
Like in the Netherlands or from my side?
No, for your personal work. What's going on with you musically?
Well, I kind of had like a concrete like topic or a question, and maybe other people who might have a way of working similar to me might be interested in it as well. So I wrote it down because sometimes I have some problems like properly phrasing a question.
For sure.
Yeah. So can I read it?
Tell me. Go for it.
So would you have any advice for someone who works mostly from a jam or exploratory basis on how to translate that process into actual recording and arrangement. And I know that people like on various levels struggle with, like actual pushing the record button or stuff like that. But I ask specifically from this position because I often find myself struggling to maintain the same energy and the same joy that I have early on in the process, in this exploratory phase, and to transfer, to maintain that energy into the next parts, to solidify it and to arrange and record. Basically.
Yeah, I mean, that's a heavy question, obviously, because it's like we're talking about like going from the exploratory and without having to like denote the importance of just improvising and exploring, right? Because like when we do things, we should always try to be starting from scratch and enjoying it more than anything else, so like we should always start with that process. But how do we like hone it in to a composition? I mean, there's different ways of like approaching it philosophically, because Brian Eno, for example, basically said in the essay that's in the book Audio Culture. I don't know if you have that book, but it's like a pretty classic collection of essays related to music and sound studies in general. But there's a good there's a really good Brian Eno essay in that where he basically says like once the improvisation is recorded, it is a composition. Which is to say like, I mean, with hardware, it's impossible unless you're documenting the visual aspect as well as the sound aspect, right?
Yeah.
So like in the case of utilizing just a demo, it could just be like a stereo out of your mixer or whatever, just to reference. I think that's super important, because how else are you going to recall it? But for me, it's like that is the foundation for what can become a song. Because in like the techno, in the dance world, in the techno world, you have mixes that will go on for hours. But like the tracks that you can listen to on, SoulSeek or Mixcloud or whatever, like those are tracks, like 3 to 5 minutes usually, they're meant to be replayed and repeated and mixed with other shit, but like they still are composed from beginning to end. There needs to be arrangement in there. And, maybe over time, like as an improviser, we can get better at arranging in the now, like Jeff Mills status, but like that takes so much time. Like I'm not there, there's always shit to change within each take, but that might be the beauty of it doing it live. But in the studio, you want to hone it in as much as possible. I guess that's what I think. I think starting with the improv, jamming it out while recording everything, and deciding which moments are the key moments that you should go back and recreate in a more controlled environment. That's that's the process that I personally go by and recommend for people who are like in a rut, because I don't like to write in a piano roll or any sort of MIDI, any sort of programming ahead of time. I like to do it live. And then go back and decide, well, what was good in the live and what was not good.
Yeah, it's like trying to, like quantify something that exists organically, right? And that makes it feel more rigid sometimes, even though it's very well possible. Like you can. I don't know. My Digitakt functions as a MIDI sequencer as well, so I can just program, like chord progressions into my Digitakt instead of playing them on the Minilogue or whatever.
It's like then it becomes part of like, well, how do you work better? Like some people are surgical MIDI programmers, right? Like their brain is entirely in the DAW or in whatever sequencer, programming stage, not the live stage, right? The entirely pre-made like a score, like it's notation. you know, and that's just the way some people work, and that's totally cool. Like, but it's not how I work, and it doesn't sound it's how you work, you know. Like I had a student in the college class I just taught today that like has never played piano or anything like that, but was using like this FL Studio crack for a project for ambient music. So basically just quantized the scale in the piano roll and just like dragged whole notes on the piano roll just blindly. But because they knew that exactly what their note value and their quantized chords were going to be ahead of time, it was like they managed to do something really well detailed that was, they didn't even hear it before they exported it. Like it was I wouldn't say it'd go that hard, but it's like some people can picture it in that mode, like how it sounds. And I think that goes just along with like kind of tapping into the composer notation brain, you know, like some people are really good at that shit. When I was like in college doing more traditional composition stuff, like I needed to be either at a piano or in the Sibelius software just to hear it as I went, because doing it on paper, you know, is difficult to imagine even for people who are super into ear training. So it's like sometimes your brain just doesn't comprehend that way. It's like humanities people versus math people. I don't know, you know, spontaneous people versus very like calculated people. And I think, you know, both have their merits, but you kind of have to figure out what your process is more like. And in this case, it sounds like you're on the spontaneous side, which requires like at a certain point honing it in, but utilize that spontaneity to at least just go ham with it for an hour and then or however long you're doing it, and decide afterwards what it is you could improve upon and do more specifically. It becomes, like you said, more of a process of like trying to make a system out of something that's natural, that's something that's organic and spontaneous. But you know, at a certain point it has to be presented, right? You know, if you're in the live context and if you're doing live techno hardware, no one expects it to be a 5-minute rendition, right? You can jam, you know, but in the studio, in that specific process, it's like the expectation with songs, if you want to call them or whatever, is like figuring out how to hone it in within X amount of duration, you know? I enjoy long form techno though. I mean, like sometimes I appreciate like just the live hardware jam versus the songs themselves, because it feels
totally
emulating at least the experience of dancing, you know? It's not like I feel like, you know, that's why I really love like Jeff Mills's like exhibitionist series, because those are one take performances that have been recorded. You know, I wrote about it during my graduate like thesis project as like an inspiration for doing like a one take concert film, because like it's very clearly one take and the visual allows that to be illustrated very clearly, you know, versus like an album, like it could be or it couldn't be, and that's not really the point. You know, like an album, the expectation is that you have the whole studio, you can take your time and layer it together. But like there is something to be said, obviously, about just improvising and becoming a surgeon with the machine. Like we should all try to be like Jeff Mills.
Like it's still programmed anyway. So it's not like you record it one time and maybe except for some hardware, most of the stuff, you know, like stays in a certain state, or you have a pattern that you can recall and then grind a bit on it later as well, right? Like make variation on it or something. So I think
I was going to say, or recalling the patterns that you already have pre-programmed, you can like set, I don't know, constraints, restrictions for yourself, and the idea that you're like, I have 5 minutes to record and go through these X amount of sequences that I've already programmed. Like within 5 minutes, how can I create the best arranged live performance, you know, because in that case, you're just thinking it like a set, but it's a 5-minute set, you know?
Yeah.
And then it becomes kind of that compromise of like all out Jeff Mills just jam for an hour of minimalism, and like slowly building up through that minimalism, or like conceptually composing it with like a stopwatch or something. And you're like, I have to get from A to Z in X amount of minutes, and I have these pre-made tools that I can choose from, as well as, you know, however many live custom things I want to add. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like there's different ways to go about it, but like either way, it requires like multiple takes. I think that like I don't like, you know, necessarily committing to the first take. You know, I mean, it has to be really felt. Anyways, yeah, I mean, I hope that gets some ideas in there. I would just say
totally.
record.
Yeah, no, it's it perfectly makes sense.
I think I don't know. I try to be, you know, diligent with the amount of recording that I do, like, you know, as far as like committing. If I'm going to do a patch, like I have to commit to documenting it at some point, even if it's not a crazy long performance or anything.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's good to set rules for yourself, even if it's just like you plan on just mostly jamming for the hell of it, because you never know.
Yeah.
You never know, Oscar.
Yep.
That's what I have to say.
Yeah. Thank you. It's a heads up. So
you got it, man. I hope Craig got most of this, because it's a good question.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll make some space for someone else, because I think there are other people in here as well, right?
Yeah, looks like it. Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Oscar.
Yeah, thank you as well. Bye-bye.
See ya. Who's up? Who's in the chat? Who's here? Who we got? SVDS.
Hey man, I can talk. How
Yo.
are you?
Hey, what's up? What's your name again, dude? Not Svids.
My name is Silas.
Silas. Tell me what's happening. Tell me what's going on with you.
Well, I like to play music by myself, like very much. I have all this time, and it's something that I like to do, and like I do it like for my own pleasure, let's say. You know, like I just do it to play music because I don't know, it does something for me, right?
For sure.
And I have been recently, like I realized in last year that I was kind of like coming up against a wall with my chops a bit, you know, where I was just like, I had all the gear I wanted, I had the stuff that I needed to like make the sounds that I wanted, but I just like but I don't like have the skills, let's say. And,
live
and
sort
like,
of pedal feedback drone stuff with the Casio, right?
Right, exactly.
Right.
Like I kind of, you know, like I tried to kind of make like a what is this called? Like kind of like a Frippatronics thing, you know, like where I can kind of bounce one loop from another to another to another, you know?
Yeah.
And so like it's really fun to play, but like, and like I don't have this problem. Like I am always recording. And so many of them end up being like the same 3 notes. And like, so when I was a young person, like I was like classically trained on the viola, you know, for a long time.
Wow,
and that didn't teach me, like I was always frustrated because I never like learned how to improvise. And so then now that I have this time and I have everything I want and like am also feeling at the same time dissatisfied, I was like, okay, I'll learn how to play the piano. Like I'll actually learn. And so then I started doing YouTube videos and like was right back into this like super, like it was just so boring, you know, like learning. Like learning whatever, go tell Aunt Rhody again, you know? And so I guess I'm wondering like if you have any ideas of like how I should handle that. Like like what I would like to do is to be able to play like essentially like jazz improvisation. It doesn't even have to be complicated. I just like want to know what I'm doing enough so that like I can keep myself interested, you know?
Well, I'll tell you, coming from personally, like I was taking piano lessons when I was like 7. That was my main instrument, as well as voice, but voice was more just casual stuff until high school. I was taking voice lessons, but piano was my first formal instrument. And my mom kind of like shopped around teachers because she was, went to Berklee College of Music and like toured with her band. Like she's like, we come from like a jazz family, but she herself is not really a jazz person. My dad, like musically, my dad is more that. So she was like in charge of finding my piano teachers when I was a kid. And we went through like, first I did like a synthesizer class. Literally my first class was like a group like keyboard lab class where we all had Yamaha synths, and we were doing like, let's do the orchestra, you play the organ part, you play the violin part, and so that tells a lot about the trajectory I went on. But the main piano teacher I had after that class, I went through some like crappier kind of classical, like old Russian lady types, but the main teacher I had was this lady, Carol Bradford. Shout out to Carol Bradford. I don't know where she is. But she basically got me not into jazz improvisation, but like the blues, and you mentioned jazz, but to me, blues is the foundation for so much like pop sensibility, in its minimalism, in its in its sort of combination of like some progression, but also freedom to improvise and to sort of combine different modes, not necessarily the idea that if you have to pick like one quote unquote like traditional approach to learning piano, and it's not going to be, and you want it to be focused on improvisation, to me, like jazz is obviously fantastic and obviously full of different eras of improvisation, from more structured to completely free. But to me, like I'm also not a jazz piano player. Like that requires serious commitment to just that, versus the blues. I've never been like a blues piano player, but it's a structure in which I studied under for a little while as a youngster, which put me in it. I don't know. It provided me the Rolodex, like the tool shed of ideas that I could recall with more minimalist and experimental music that I'm personally into, which in your case, even with Frippertronics, like the idea of just playing like diatonic and pentatonic arpeggiations, but knowing exactly what the notes are in those scales, that can come from blues, like that's a genre to find it. I mean, the only other suggestion I would have, if it were to be a more, classical oriented way, is to like study, start with like Satie and Debussy. You know what I mean? Like these late 1800s, early 1900s French guys that were like the proto jazz experimentalists, like post romanticists, because obviously Eric Satie is like, proto, like the minimalist god. Like Brian Eno wouldn't be shit. Brian Eno and Lamont Young wouldn't be shit without Satie, so it's like, I don't know, trying to find the connections and bridging the gaps between traditional or sort of, more standard styles of music and the weirdo shit that we're trying to do in the studio. It's hard, but you can find these connections, particularly in not very complicated blues exercises.
Okay. Totally.
I mean, like, even now, like the music that I listen to now, like listening to like hella doom metal, like Earth. I don't know if you listen to Earth at all, but like they've basically become like a gospel blues drone band,
right? Totally.
You know, right. And showing the connections between like Indian music and American South, you know, like music from the steep South and Appalachia. You know, it's and putting it all under this like distorted guitar band context, like, you know, it just goes to show you could be a riff god, or it could just be like a foundation for drone, you know? There's a lot to do. There's a lot you could do with that. So that would be my first step in looking to tighten up on chops, is finding, and I could actually look to, cause I'd be curious on like, even if it is just YouTube, like finding the right like blues exercises, via video tutorials or whatever, just to get you comfortable with like doing one thing with your left hand, just a progression with your left hand, and improvising in a mode on your right, you know?
Right. Yeah, totally.
That's like, that coordination is key, you know, being able to just like be autopilot on the left while spontaneous on the right is, you know, that's practice. I'm out of practice with that shit, honestly. I've been doing so much solo right hand stuff because I've been doing mono synth shit for so long. Like, you know, it's like I've lost chops myself personally, despite having a newer or relatively new grand piano MIDI controller. I'm fucking up too. So maybe this will be the motivation for both of us.
Well, I mean, like, it's not like it's the answer. It seems like it might be the answer for me. I bet there's a lot of people where it's like the opposite, you know, is like what they need to do. You know, I mean, it's just like, if I listen to like any pop music, right? I hear people do their solo breaks and I go like, that sounds so easy. You know, like it for the most part, like it sounds like so easy, but like it works so well. And I just like feel like I missed, or even like if I play with a friend and they're like, okay, what key are you in? And I have no idea what they're talking about. Is how it feels.
Right.
But like I had all these years of education, like, you know, of classical music education. So I just feel like I got some skills that just like kind of like went in the wrong direction a little bit for like where I'm at now. And so blues sounds, I hear you, you know.
I think it sucks that like in a classical music education that they're not going to have equal emphasis on solfege ear training as they would theory on paper, you know? Because if you at least in my experience, when I had to do classical music studies, because I've never really been a performance person, but like when I did composition as a bachelor's, like I had to take all the classical music core classes and shit. And ear training was, even if it wasn't for an improvisational, even if it was just like a Bach chorale, like SATB dictation exercise, like you can recall, you know, learning not necessarily perfect pitch, but like being able to have some sort of relative pitch as an improviser is so helpful. And like getting the ear training emphasis as an instrumentalist, getting ear training emphasis as much as orchestration and theory on paper notation training is so important. I think that's, I don't know, some programs, I mean, did you study at college or was this like in your childhood, like doing the viola? I mean,
I did like, you know, like I did a music school in New York City up until like middle school. And then I went to Juilliard pre-college through high school.
Gotcha.
And
yeah,
then,
that's,
like,
I mean, that's,
and like, and it was, and look, it's not like it could just as, it's more likely that it was me than the program itself, you know, like it was not doing it for me then, you know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, of course, no one expects.
I could not tell you what they taught in their theory classes because like I was not paying attention, you know?
Yeah, neither was I. I mean, I failed. I think, and I've said this multiple times, and Greg Fox also attested to it, that all the greatest musicians fail high school music theory class. Like, it's just like the Albert Einstein syndrome, you know, like Albert Einstein failing out of science classes in high school and college, you know? It's like, I don't know, not to say we're Albert Einsteins here, but like, it kind of makes sense that the more creative composer types wouldn't really jive with theory at such a young rebellious age. Ooh, my voice cracked. But the idea that you're going to be handed a piece of paper, and the circle of fifths is going to be something you're interested in when you're 15. Like, forget about it. Yeah, honestly,
forget about it. No way.
That's no way. I didn't jive with it. I didn't jive with it until like the last 2 years of college, when I realized that I could apply this to some extent. I mean, it's like learning some math. Like, you're not going to utilize all of it in your day to day, but like having the foundation will just give you better brain activity, which will lead to better ideas. So like, I think having a little bit of theory, not necessarily related to classical music, but keyboard studies is inherently ingrained with theory. So even if you're just going to be looking up like blues improv techniques, like, learning counterpoint and, chord progression from a theoretical, even if it's just like lead sheets, like the intervals with the Roman numerals, like 1, 4, 5, I, V, V, all that shit. You just, the more you look at it, the more you fuck around with it, I think you're just going to be able to at least have the chops that you want to then improvise the way you want to make the feedback drone that you want. That's the end goal. That's all. That's the end goal for all of us, isn't it? Feedback drone, just chop, but I think it's cool that you are self-aware enough of realizing that like there are some fundamentals that are important. That's the only thing. That's the only way it's going to work, is that like you Stay motivated.
Cool.
You know what I mean? You got it, Silas. Enjoy empty, quiet Cape Cod.
Yes, I will.
Say hi to the cranberry bogs for me, and
the turkeys.
Cape Cod turkeys are another breed, because they're all on opiates. They'll fucking kill you.
They're big. Whatever they're on, they're big.
Yeah. Well, they juicing too, because they're gym rats. They're gym rats. They're townies. They don't have much going on for them. They go to the gym and then they do opiates and they wait for tourist season to come around. Jesus Christ, I'm going to be canceled. Listen, right. I'm from Massachusetts. Man. I can say this shit. Yeah, Thank you, Silas. Sure. Thank you, Silas. Talk to you soon, bro. All right. I think that's going to be it. No one else is here. That's cool. We had some cool conversations just now. I'm glad that we did this. This was fun.